So who could be the next supreme leader of Iran? Well, it might just be a man who's basically a ghost. For years, he's been a name whispered in the halls of power, but he's a complete unknown to the public. You see, for years, decades really, this guy, Mojtaba Khamenei, has been a total phantom. I mean, seriously, besides a couple of old photographs, he's invisible. We've never even heard his voice in the media. This creates a pretty profound mystery around the man who might one day rule a nation of over 80 million people. But, just because he's a ghost to the public doesn't mean he's a nobody, not even close. His name alone is reportedly enough to set off major alarm bells in intelligence agencies all over the world. We're talking the CIA, Mossad. They know exactly who this guy is, even if most of us don't. So that's the million-dollar question, right? How does a guy who's practically invisible become one of the most powerful and maybe one of the most feared figures in the entire Middle East? Well, let's get into it. Okay, so to really get a handle on Mojtaba, you've got to start with his father, the current supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. And here's why. They are said to be complete and total opposites. I mean, just look at this contrast. On one hand, you have his father, Ali Khamenei, who's often described as, a simple and soft man, a scholar, a cleric. And then there's Mojtaba, who's seen as the absolute opposite. He wasn't shaped by a seminary, he was shaped by the battlefield. He's a warrior. And that's not just a personality quirk, you guys. That could signal a huge, huge shift for the future of Iran. And that whole warrior thing, it wasn't just some identity he picked up. No, it was literally forged in fire, in the middle of a brutal, decade-long war that completely defined his youth. All right, so let's put this into perspective. Mojtaba Khamenei was just a kid when the Iran-Iraq War kicked off. His entire childhood was basically war. And then, get this, at 17, while his dad is the president of the country, he doesn't pull strings to get a safe job. Nope, he enlists as a regular, common soldier. And this right here, this is the bedrock of his entire reputation. The story goes he wasn't stashed away in some safe bunker. He was reportedly right there on the front lines, fighting. And that right there is why the military establishment sees him as one of their own. Yeah, there's this one anecdote from the war that gets told and retold. It's said that Mojtaba and his battalion went deep into Iraqi territory and managed to raise the Iranian flag on 30 different enemy mountains. Now, whether that's 100% fact or a bit of legend, it doesn't really matter. It's an incredibly powerful story that just adds to his whole warrior mythos. Okay, so the war ends. What happens to this warrior? How does that persona translate into real power? Well, his influence didn't just disappear. It just went underground, into the shadows. And listen, this wasn't just a thanks for your service and then he leaves. No way. The source says he stuck around in the military for another 10 years after the war. He was forging these incredibly deep connections, building a power base that was completely separate from his father's religious authority. That's the key here. His power comes from the military, not the clergy. All right, so to get one of the biggest reported rifts between the father and the son, we need to quickly talk about something called a fatwa. It's basically a binding religious ruling from a top scholar. Okay, so check this out. His father, the supreme leader, issues this world-famous fatwa saying that making or using nuclear weapons is haram. It's forbidden in Islam. But according to reports, Mojtaba and a lot of other hardliners were completely against this. They believed that for Iran to survive, a nuclear bomb wasn't just an option, it was a flat-out necessity. For the longest time, all of this was just chatter, rumors swirling around. But then, about 2 decades ago, everything changed. WikiLeaks drops these classified documents, and suddenly the curtain gets pulled back. For the very first time, the world got a real look at this hidden power broker. And you have to see what was in these leaks. They painted a picture of him as a capable and forceful leader. They talked about his huge influence over the military and the intelligence services. They even connected him directly to the nuclear program. And here's the kicker. They flagged him as a potential future supreme leader 20 years ago. So the big question is, how does he actually get the top job? Well, the source material sketches out one pretty dramatic, pretty speculative scenario, a kind of hypothetical road to power for Mojtaba Khamenei. So here's how this hypothetical goes. It starts with a massive crisis. Let's say a huge foreign attack that actually takes out the current leadership. It's total chaos. The country's reeling. And in that moment, who do the people turn to? Not a scholar. They're looking for a protector, a warrior.
Yeah, in this scenario, his rise to power isn't some backroom political deal. It's framed as a massive popular demand. People are literally in the streets, chanting his name, demanding that the warrior's son take over from his scholar father to save the nation.
And so that brings us right back to this really provocative question. If a situation like that ever happened, would it mean a total change in what it means to be the leader of Iran? Would it be the end of an era defined by a scholar and the beginning of a new one defined by a warrior? I guess that's the central mystery, isn't it? The mystery of Mujtaba Khamenei.